Oh, it was a great day in week number 8 for number 4 in Dallas. Dak Prescott with a huge game in the Cowboys win over the Rams. 4 touchdown passes. I love Dak Prescott coming off of the bye. He's gotten just better and better as the career has gone on. When he's had a break, maybe that'll happen in the playoffs for Dallas once upon a time. But you know what? In the regular season, he's done a fantastic job. And as you see here, he just does great whenever he has the volume that we like to see. Most games with 300 yards passing and 4 touchdowns in Cowboys history. Tied CBS's Tony Romo with 6. Great performance for Dak as one of the winners. As we talk winners and losers from week number 8, I'm Jamey Eisenberg. That's Heath Cummings. I'll start with my winners, Heath. And Dak, one of the biggest winners for fantasy managers. Like I said, I loved him coming off the bye week, and he was in Superstar against the Rams. I hope it's a sign of things to come. Big game for CeeDee Lamb as well. Some other winners for me, Austin Eckler. Looking like Austin Eckler once again. 7 catches, 94 yards, and the touchdown. He did a few things on the ground as well, but really involvement in the passing game was huge for him. DeAndre Hopkins, he got a quarterback upgrade. At least that's what it looked like. Will Levis helping Hopkins find the end zone 3 times, 4 catches, 128 yards. Hopefully DeAndre stays in Tennessee and we can see the connection continue moving forward. And then we got a new tight end that we can look at here in Trey McBride. Fantastic performance for him as he replaces Akers. 14 targets, 10 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Josh Dobbs is going to stay the quarterback for the Cardinals. That's good, at least we hope, for Trey McBride in week number 9 as they take on the Cleveland Browns.
A little bit of a welcome back flavor to my winners. Joe Burrow looking like Joe Burrow again, his best game of the 2023 season. We can stop worrying about the Bengals. Just start all your Bengals once again. Deontay Johnson looking like Deontay Johnson again. 14 targets for him for just 5 for George Pickens. Now we've got 2 games since Johnson came back. One where Pickens was the number 1, one where Johnson was the number 1. I think you're probably treating both like number 3 wide receivers for the foreseeable future. Cole Kmet, his 3rd game this season with at least 15 PPR fantasy points. Tight end is looking deep. And then the big winner, Zach Moss. To one degree or another, I think we all were kind of starting to write Zach Moss off as a starting fantasy running back because Jonathan Taylor just kept playing more snaps, seeing more touches. Well, it kind of went back a little bit the other way within week 8. Actually, 4 of 5 snaps inside the 5-yard line going to Zach Moss. He scored the only touchdown. He scored more fantasy points than Taylor. With 4 teams on a bye, I think you view Moss as a low-end number 2 running back once again.
Where there are winners, unfortunately, there are losers as we transition to the players who left us wanting just a little bit more in week number 8. And certainly for me, the start of the week, C.J. Stroud did not have the performance I was expecting. Only 12 fantasy points. Thankfully, he had a rushing touchdown against the Panthers as Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick, beat C.J. Stroud, the number 2 overall pick, for the Panthers' first win. We got a lot of problems in Minnesota, obviously, with Kirk Cousins going down for the remainder of the season. And Alexander Mattison maybe starting to see his starting role slip away as Cam Akers scored a rushing touchdown, had more fantasy points than Madison, but we know this offense in Minnesota certainly heading in the wrong direction. Cooper Kupp might be feeling the same thing because of the loss of Matthew Stafford and Kyle Pitts. Just another poor performance. As Heath said, tight end's getting better. Unfortunately, Pitts is getting worse, but the quarterback change that we might be seeing in Atlanta with Taylor Heineke taking over for Desmond Ridder, that might be a good thing for Pitts moving forward. But a little bit more on Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. No Matthew Stafford. We don't know how long he's going to be out, but dealing with that thumb injury. If they don't have their starting quarterback, it's hard to say Cooper Kupp is a top 5 receiver, maybe not even a top 10 receiver. So troubles for the Rams if they don't have their starting quarterback. We're waiting to find out how long Matthew Stafford might be out.
So we don't know how long Matthew Stafford's going to be out. We fear Kirk Cousins is going to be out for the year, and that makes Jordan Addison a loser, isn't it? He'd moved up into that borderline number 1 wide receiver range because of how much the Vikings threw and because of how good he'd been the last couple of weeks. Now he's more of a boom-bust number 3 wide receiver, depending on what happens with the Vikings quarterback situation. The rest of these losers might also look like the most dropped list when we get the waivers done by the end of the week. Miles Sanders, no fantasy points, 2 carries. Chuba Hubbard wasn't even good, and Sanders could barely get on the field. Jordan Love, Jonnu Smith had some really nice success early in the season, but both absolutely trending in the wrong direction and trending towards the waiver wire.
All right, so speaking of the waiver wire, Heath, we got to help some people as they start to look ahead to week number 9, trying to make those roster moves that are going to help them. And you said this earlier, tight end is looking good, and so we'll show you the list of the top 10 options. We'll obviously get more into it on Tuesday on our Fantasy Football Today podcast. You can see the story on the waiver wire on CBSSports.com, and we'll obviously talk about it on CBS Sports HQ as well. But Trey McBride, the number 1 player to go get. He had 10 catches from Josh Dobbs. No more Zach Ertz. So McBride is looking like a guy that we said earlier in the season when we thought Ertz might not come back right away from the ACL tear, could be a sleeper. He may be a breakout going into the rest of the way. David Njoku has been the only bright spot in the passing game consistently without Deshaun Watson on the field. We don't know if Watson's going to come back, but a great matchup taking on the Texans in week number 9 for the Browns. I think it'll be a good situation for David Njoku and continue to build off what we've seen the last few weeks. Same thing with Logan Thomas. Great matchup coming up for the Commanders as well. Like the setup for him and what he's been doing with his production the last few weeks. And this is a guy that Sam Howell has kind of leaned on again consistently. We like it. It's been almost every other week that Logan Thomas has produced at a high level. And then you see some quarterbacks on this list because we know quarterback is clearly a problem. Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford dealing with significant injuries. So you got Gardner Minshew, great matchup for him. Derek Carr, great matchup for him as well coming up. And Baker Mayfield, same thing. So all 3 quarterbacks available in the majority of leagues. You can go get them and plug them into your lineup. Remember, 4 teams on a bye in week 9 as well.
You know, there's one reason that the tight ends and quarterbacks are at the top of this list is because of how good the tight ends were and how much we need tight ends. The other reason is because the wide receiver and running backs options just aren't that great. I do want to go add Jahan Dotson everywhere. I was very excited about him coming into this season. Got off to a bad start, but the drops were really uncharacteristic. Looked like he fixed that in a big way, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a springboard to him being someone who matters in fantasy again. And speaking of mattering, Quentin Johnston for the first time this season did matter to the Chargers. 5 catches, 50 yards. Those are both career highs. Hopefully they keep getting him the ball closer to the line of scrimmage. He is not a downfield threat. When they get him the ball close to the line of scrimmage, he can do things after the catch, and it looks very good. And then Cam Akers, the only running back on the list, he's trending towards possibly supplanting Alexander Mattison. I think more likely this turns into some sort of gross committee. You should go add Akers, but it's more to just put him on your bench and hope something better happens in the future.
Very rare that we see a running back last on the list, but that just tells you where we are right now with the position and obviously some other players at other spots stepping up. All right, Heath, we got a game tonight between the Raiders and the Lions. Let's go through our DFS lineups on FanDuel to help some people win some money and maybe salvage their fantasy week. So take us through your lineup for tonight's game.
I've got Jahmyr Gibbs as my MVP. He was my number 2 running back coming into this game, and he's only 12,000 on FanDuel. Absolutely love it. I'll pair him up with Jared Goff because Jared Goff's at home and you got to start him. And then I want to see if Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously Devontae Adams is going to be a thing, but we saw a couple of players who have kind of been talked about as being on the trade block. Let's get Hunter Renfrow into the end zone. Let's show teams that Renfrow can still get open out of the slot. Then maybe they can deal him on Tuesday.
Like that setup. I'm going to go with a Lions MVP as well. You mentioned Jared Goff at home. Love the setup for him. I'm going to stack him with Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. It's been a good situation for tight ends. Hopefully that continues in tonight's game. We know Laporta's been a superstar, and I love the setup there for him taking on the Raiders. And what we've seen from Jacoby Myers is every time Jimmy Garoppolo has started, Myers had a big game. And so I think that's going to continue. As much as Devontae Adams has to get going, I'm with you. I hope this is one of those games. Garoppolo's leaned on Jacoby Myers, so I like that stack as well. So stack with Goff and a couple of his guys, a stack with Garoppolo and Myers. You'll be cashing in my lineup. You'll be cashing in Heath's lineup. You'll be cashing across the board because that's what we do. We help you win in your fantasy leagues. You know what else helps you win? Our Fantasy Football Today podcast. Make sure you're checking it out wherever podcasts are available. We help you dominate your fantasy leagues. The Fantasy Football Today podcast.